So good morning and welcome to our second Zoom class, The Wisdom of the Soul. It's a pleasure, truly a pleasure to be with you. In fact, I've been looking forward to this for a number of reasons, not the least of which is to create a kind of a safe space and a refuge from the news of war, which I find breathtaking and difficult to even speak about. I try to think of myself not only as not a racist, but as an anti-racist. Just like I think of myself as refusing not only to participate in killing, but being an anti-war activist. And yet, I must admit, as abhorrent as war in the Middle East is, the United States going into Iraq or Afghanistan, to see war in Europe, so much of the right is about white supremacy and whiteness, white superiority. That is white supremacy, right? Russia does not believe in diversity. Nobody's immigrating to Russia. Nobody's in a hurry to get into Russia. So they're pretty much a pure white society, as is Ukraine. And to see blonde-haired, blue-eyed children terrified, dying, and people that look like us running should ideally be no more shocking than thoughts of brown people running from advancing American forces in Iraq or Afghanistan when the United States uses drones. It shouldn't be. And so I'm almost embarrassed to admit that it is shocking to me. I've known all my life that the United States could have nuked Germany, but it didn't, because white people live in Germany. But we didn't hesitate to nuke the Japanese twice. We put Americans of Japanese descent in concentration camps in California. Nobody locked up the Germans, Americans of German or Italian descent. So when we talk about systemic racism, and we like to think of ourselves as good liberals and progressives and people who are beyond all of that, I think it's good to get really honest and vulnerable and recognize just how deep it is and how shocking, therefore, to see war in Europe. Shouldn't be any more shocking than war anywhere in the world, but it is. And in any event, maybe that's one of the silver linings that comes out of this, that war seems so archaic. Wars that we tried to justify since the beginning of time. 1,000 years ago, Thomas Aquinas wrote about just war and what justifies war. And it wasn't until the end of World War II that America's Department of War was relabeled Department of Defense, although we have troops in 150 nations. I think my appeal to you today is to reject any attempt to frame war as political and to see it instead as the grossest of human rights violations and to look at it from a spiritual point of view as just absolutely abhorrent. Killing is wrong. I questioned a Buddhist teacher of mine recently when she talked about going to hell for swatting a mosquito. And I said, well, what are we to do if a tiger jumps on us or some other wild animal? Are we not to defend ourselves? And she said, oh no. She said, if you don't have great psychic powers such that you could, cause the animal to stop charging. There are stories of an elephant charging Buddha, Gautama Siddhartha, after he was realized, and he just spoke to the elephant. He had spent time with elephants on retreat in the jungle, and the story goes that he spoke their language. He could trumpet like an elephant, and he did that, and the elephant stopped charging. And if you don't have that kind of power, she said, then you are allowed to defend yourself, to truly defend yourself. But the vast majority of violence in the world, of course, is not about defending ourselves. So I'd like to do an opening focus that is about honoring the peace that lives eternally within us. I said this last week in our first class. It bears repeating. Peace, first of all, clearly is more than the absence of war, violence, and conflict. Peace is a level of consciousness. It dwells within us at all times. It is not something we need to attain. We need to release everything that is not peaceful within us. Just as love is always available to us, we don't need to attain love or find love. It's with us always in the core of our being. It is inherent and innate to consciousness itself, peace and love. And the other qualities, kindness and humor and appreciation of beauty and wisdom and truth and patience and tolerance, and there are many, many qualities of this peace and love and happiness that dwells within us. So in every case, all we need to do is let go of what is not peaceful and loving and happy, and there it is. It's been there all along. So how do we influence others to be more peaceful? Well, we have to model it. And I would have you consider, and again, this is a model, don't take this literally, although you could. Just as each of us experiences the weather in a different way, my wife Doreen and I often disagree about whether it's hot. What one of us thinks is hot one day is not so hot to the other, or vice versa. And so we have to compromise over what we do with the heater or the air conditioner. We talked last week about the difference between absolute truth and relative truth, and that's a good example. So the absolute truth is whatever we end up setting the thermostat to. But weather also exists on a shared plane. So a storm front comes through. You can see it on television. They'll show you these high pressure areas and low pressure areas. And without dragging this out, I'd like to suggest that there is, in a very subtle way, a plane known as the astral plane, a plane, if you will, a sphere of shared emotions. And emotional peace, of course, is a portal to spiritual peace. We could talk about Christ calming the water, walking on the water, as he spoke about refusing to be afraid, and read the allegory and the metaphor in that. We did a visualization of calm water last week and projected that out into the world, and I'd like to do that again today. But with the awareness that you really are making a difference when you allow yourself to experience tranquility and peace, when you quiet the mind and calm the emotional nature and still the physical body, and think of influencing the weather around you, the emotional weather, that shared plane. It makes a difference. Mystics have said so from the beginning of time. And now the quantum scientists are saying, yeah, we call it the observer effect, but there's no question. Brain researchers are saying the same thing. There's no question that the intention and the attitude with which you observe something changes not only what you observe, but the observer, who you are. Let me say that again, because that's quite profound and very fundamental, very much at the core of all spiritual teaching. That consciousness, the nature of your awareness, call it your intention, or your attention, or your attitude, changes not only what you look at, but changes the one who's doing the looking as well. See? So we're in a hall of mirrors. You know the barbershop mirrors where, have you ever seen barbershop mirrors, these opposing mirrors where you can see off into infinity because the reflection is bouncing back and forth, each time getting a little smaller all the way down to that's the way the universe works. Joseph Chilton Pearce said, man's mind is a mirror that reflects the universe mirroring man's mind. And it was like, whoa, some kind of house of mirrors, a fun house of mirrors. Well, how do you break out of that? How do you not, be the reflection in both ways? How do you rise above that? It's consciousness. It's not simply mentality, the way we think. It's not merely our emotions, the way we feel. And it's clearly not limited to our physical actions or our perception of the world. Standing above all of those is awareness. You can think with very little awareness of what you're thinking about. The example I always use is sitting at the traffic light after it's already turned green. You're thinking about something, and you're aware on some level, to some degree, just not about traffic lights. And so somebody has to bring you back to the, place and time where the light just turned green, and now you're sitting at a green traffic light. We can be aware of our emotions to varying degrees, sometimes very aware of an emotion, sometimes not aware at all, and a variety of in-betweens. Likewise, our behavior could be reflexive, or it could be conscious and deliberate. How aware are you? That's consciousness. Are we aware of being aware? Do we notice what we notice? And only then can we really understand and appreciate the way that we observe and who we believe we are is affected by our degree of consciousness. We'll talk about this more in the future, but I'm talking about it in the context of being peaceful while the news is pouring out of our televisions and radios, this horrific news. It's like a train wreck. You don't want to be in a train wreck, but it's hard not to watch it. We have to deal with this. We have to process it. We have to be aware of it. The problem is we tend to go numb, and we don't want to be numb. There's just too much psychic numbing in the world. Normally compassionate people, when they observe one person or a small group of people suffering, it's innate for human beings to be compassionate about that. But when huge numbers of people suffer, 800,000 die from COVID, thousands every day, day after day after day after day, bodies piling up like cordwood, refrigerator trucks. We can't deal with it. We can't cope. We numb over. Global warming and climate change, can't handle it. We go psychically numb. Nuclear war, can't handle it. Peace activists are accused of frightening people when they bring it up. We didn't build the nukes. The anti-war, the anti-nuke people are not the bad guys because they're frightening people. We go psychically numb. You've seen the film, no doubt, by now, Don't Look Up. There's a comet coming to smash into the earth. Don't look up. Look down. They want you to look up. What did they? What did Meryl Streep say in the movie? They want you to look up so they can look down their noses at you. We have to face it. We have to embrace it. The horrors and the evils and the shadows in our lives. It's part of being spiritual. That's what it means to be awake and aware and conscious. We can't dismiss it. We can't ignore it and just sit in our meditation. We have to open our eyes and move out into the world and do something. And you might say, well, how can my behavior, the way I treat people in my daily life and affairs affect a war on the other side of the world? It does. If you think in terms of emotions being on a shared plane, you have individual emotions, no doubt about it, just like you experience the weather individually. But there's also a plane, and being peaceful influences the way other people experience themselves. And politicians are never going to stop war, and the people who profit from war are never going to stop war. We can't expect anybody to stop war except those of us who refuse to, that old saying, what if they gave a war and nobody came? If you really need to defend yourself, you'll know if and when that ever happens. It's not likely. The world's getting safer every day. You wouldn't believe it to watch the news, but it is. Sorry if I'm going on about this, but I just feel so strongly about it, and I'm just so heartbroken that in 2022, a nation, a big nation, Russia spans like 8 time zones or something. It's a huge nation, is lobbing rockets and shooting at people they've never met. That's the strangest thing about war, shooting strangers over what? And it always comes down to money and power and resources and territory, and it's so medieval, so barbaric. So how can we be peaceful warriors? How can we be sacred activists? How can we refuse to get political and still draw upon what we believe and live a meaningful life in this way? So don't underestimate the power of meditation and then the way you treat people in your everyday life. Just a little bit of kindness. My God, it's so easy to do, and it's so important to people. You can change a person's whole day, just by being gentle with them and kind to them. It's not hard. And then own your frustrations. Process them. As we'll talk about how to do that. We'll have some practical tools and techniques for owning your emotions, emotional intelligence as we continue. So let's do a focus, okay? You want to get comfortable in your chairs. Sit up. Sit up straight but not rigid. Balance yourself. Feet flat on the floor. Close your eyes. And give yourself a minute just to settle in. Take 2 or 3 nice, slow, deep breaths, pulling in strength and power as you inhale. And create and sense a letting go feeling as you exhale. Do that several times. And then turn your breathing over to autopilot. Let your body just breathe itself. If at any time you become aware of a need to take another slow, deep breath or two, feel free to do that. And it's always a letting go, a deep letting go as you exhale. Let time stand still. Remind yourself there's nowhere else you need to be, nowhere else you'd rather be. Nothing you have to be doing for the next hour or so. You've committed yourself to being here for a reason, so be here. Remind your mind as it chatters along that we can attend to all of that later. And just sit and feel yourself being supported by the chair as surely as the chair is supported by the floor. And there's no need for us to cooperate with the chair or the floor. And so scan slowly, sweep your body from head to toe and back again, creating and sensing a letting go of the last of any residual tension. Feel muscles relaxing and unwinding. Imagine the miles and miles of tiny thread-like capillaries in your body dilating as the muscles through which they course relax. And so the blood moves more freely with less resistance as you become more and more relaxed and feel safer and safer. Feel the letting go. Like muddy water, imagine the silt and the sediment slowly settling. And the water becoming clear and clean. And calm as you become more relaxed in the moment, feeling very safe. Consider that the center, the heart area, the core of your being, is where we begin to witness peace and ease and grace, elegance, that wonderful feeling of knowing that everything's just fine right now. Our anxieties and our worries are in future concerns and past resentments, but right now, everything's just fine. No place else I'd rather be. For the next few minutes, there's nothing else I would rather be doing. And feel that peace, that love in the center, in the core of your being, slowly begin to expand, gently radiate like a warmth outward from your heart, filling your rib cage. All the little nooks and crannies and parts of you that sometimes feel empty, lonely, or disturbed, filled by this gentle warmth, this peace, this love, this light. Continuing to radiate, to expand gently in all directions, effortlessly, filling your body, and then radiating beyond the limits of your physical body to the subtler bodies, and expanding beyond the room in which you sit. Imagine that peace and that love extending to your family, to each individual, in your immediate family and your extended family. And be sure to include your pets, the dogs and the cats, the hamster. How about the wild birds? They struggle so to survive. Imagine peace, ease, grace, prosperity. And the wild animals. To the people in your community. To those you know and love and care for, and even to those you don't know, and maybe some you know and don't really like very much. Send them peace and love. Not through any effort, you see. You're not pushing. You're just allowing this peace to do what it does, to proceed. A natural moving forth, an unfoldment. That moves outward to your state, your nation, and especially to the areas of war in Ukraine. Imagine yourself finding someone there who is terrified. You don't know them. You only know that they're just horrified, perhaps homeless, worried about their children, not knowing where the next meal will come from. And you just hold them. You just gently hug them, if you could, but gently hug them and whisper in their ear, be not afraid. Be safe. Be healthy. Recognize your worry and your concern, your fears as love for your children and your family, for your neighbors, for your nation, for the world. If you could do that, if you could go down the streets one by one, sharing your love by just holding someone who's terrified for a few moments, such that they feel your peace. Like Christ walking on water. Calm water, still water, undisturbed water. It's the undisturbed emotional nature that supports us and drives out fear. Love drives out fear as understanding vaporizes ignorance, as light dispatches shadow. There is no struggle. There is no effort. Peace is truth. Love is truth. It is wisdom. It is the heart and soul of all things. May there be peace on earth, goodwill. Sounds like Christmas. Peace on earth, goodwill to all. Peace on earth, goodwill. Not a lot to ask. Spread peace. Be the peace. Be the being you wish others to be. And know that your influence is significant. Say to yourself silently and internally, this is true, this feels true, this feels real. So it is. And so it is. Allow yourself to experience a gentle, even subtle little smile in the midst of this madness. There's no effort in smiling. Again, it's a matter of simply allowing the corners of your mouth to relax, and they turn upward all by themselves. And in a moment, I'll ask you to take a single deep, slow breath, filling your lungs, and as you exhale, reorient yourself and open your eyes back in the room, wide awake, feeling better than before. And together now, let's inhale. And as you exhale, feel the letting go feeling and open your eyes, wide awake, back in the room. Feeling fine, feeling better. and better and better. Okay, welcome back. It was sort of a mid-class focus instead of an opening focus, but thank you for that. Group meditations are powerful. So much, I always feel it. It's so much more effective than meditating alone. It's a nice idea, by the way. Anytime you do a meditation, consider how many people in the world just coincidentally happen to be meditating at the same time. How many millions of people are in prayer or meditation at that moment, at any moment, and join that group. All right, and some might say that there's an overshadowing group in perpetual meditation. You could join that group as well. But you're never alone. One of the big lessons is that, and if we have time, I'd like to get to it today, this illusion that we're alone, that we're separate, that we live in a world of distinct forms, and it's just not true. But it needs to be explained, and it needs to be discussed, and I will risk the temptation to get ahead of myself and pick up where we left off last week. So last week was pretty simple and straightforward. We talked about physics, basic physics. It says the universe is made out of energy. And yeah, there's this material stuff, this matter. You probably have some familiarity with the periodic table and the solid stuff in the world, what it's made out of. Broken up stars, basically. The clay of the earth. That's all we got to work with. Really, rocks and minerals and metals and gases and liquids. It's all in the periodic table. It all breaks down to, 100 and some elements. Every once in a while they add one. So the universe is energy and it is matter. Scientists refer to the matter as mass. So any scientist or any middle school kid in science class will tell you, yeah, we've been real clear as a species that the universe is made up of energy and mass. And Einstein put an equal sign between the two. Energy equals mass at the speed of light squared. E equals mc squared. Mass times the speed of light squared equals energy. So they're two forms of the same thing. Einstein put an equal sign there. And we know by the law of impermanence that we touched on last week that everything passes, rusts, corrodes, rots, fades away. Even our thoughts and feelings, even our desire nature is never fulfilled for very long before we desire something else. We're never fully satisfied. One of the 7 sufferings we talked about last week. And so what's substantial in that equation, energy equals mass, is the energy. That's what's real. That's what's eternal and infinite and cannot be destroyed. And the solid stuff that we think is the important side of the equation, well, that's like a cloud. It's passing. It's changing shape. It's, I think I quoted Heraclitus last week. No one steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river. They are not the same person. Everything is in flux. Everything is changing. It's growing or decaying. Everything has its season. Turn, 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 right? So the energy is a substantial part. Energy creates mass. No scientist would disagree with that. Well, the religious people call that spirit and matter. There's really no difference. And spirit creates matter. And spirit is personified, or has been traditionally, as God. An absolute, capital A, an absolute, a Godhead, a capital C creator, a capital S source of all that is. We call this the mystery school in honor of the traditional mystery schools. Mystics and mysticism, all of that speaks to the great mystery about the one about whom nothing can be said, the one about whom naught may be said. When we give names to God, that's where we start to break the absolute into a trinity. You have to consider that the Godhead either stands above the Trinity or comprises the Trinity. The oneness of Trinitarian views of the divine is the Godhead. There is an Anesthesian creed in Catholicism that's probably more clear than anything else about the Trinity and the Godhead. So it's not like beyond God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, there's another God of higher rank that nobody talks about. It's the Godhead, or the Absolute, is the prime mover, the ultimate cause behind all effect. And if you daisy chain your way back, cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect, what is the prime mover? And we talked last week about how the word one can mean this one as opposed to that one, a separative one or a unitive one. And we touched on the difference between monotheism, the one God living outside its creation, though imbuing it with Holy Spirit, such that God is everywhere equally present. But still, we have this personification, some would say idolatry, of a man on a cloud, the old white guy in the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Whereas monism is a understanding of one as whole and ultimately inseparable, such that the multiplicity of creation has to be an illusion of some sort. For ultimately there is no separation. Only in our perception is there a separation. Pull on a little bit of basic science again. We know, this is by way of reviewing last week, that the most solid material is simply a cloud of electrons, less compact than a snowstorm. If we could zoom in or scale it up, there'd be more space between the electrons in a piece of lead than between the planets in our solar system. Its strength, its appearance, comes from the energy, from the various forces, electromagnetic, gravitational, centrifugal, centripetal. I'm not strong on physics, so I don't know all the forces, but when you lean against something, you allow the chair to support you. That's less about the particles supporting particles, the matter supporting matter, than it is about energy being the ultimate substance. There are no edges, you see. It's all an illusion. But something's going on. Sometimes this is overstated, and a neophyte will stumble into esoteric philosophy and start going on about how it's all a dream, it's all an illusion, we're just on a holiday. No, I'm sorry, there's something real going on, something physical. We have instruments that measure. We do a great job of manipulating matter. I come on a radio, amateur radio before commercial radio. I'm still, I was licensed as a ham radio operator when I was 14. I'm as fascinated now in my 70s as I was as a young teenager at being able to project my voice electromagnetically through the ethers and talk to people all around the world on 100 watts of power. And the signal's skipping around the planet. It's just amazing. So something's going on out there. And we'll talk more about that. So in physics, energy and mass we describe as spirit and matter in metaphysics or spirituality. And so proceeding forth from the oneness that is divinity itself is this material world. And I gave you a riddle, those of you who were with us last week. What comes third stands as number 2 and makes the 3 a 1. And I'll ask you later how you did on that, if anybody figured that out. What comes third stands as number 2 and makes the 3 a 1. And it is the center of the Trinity. What stands between energy and mass? What stands between spirit and matter? What stands between the Creator and its creation, between God and man, between heaven and earth? There has to be a middle. Why does there have to be a middle? Get this. This is important. There has to be a middle so that the one can create the many without being diminished. There has to be a center element that allows the one to retain its wholeness, though it manifests as multiplicity, the appearance of many seemingly separate and in many ways clearly unique forms. No two snowflakes. I've always heard no two snowflakes alike. Why not? Why didn't the universe decide 7 snowflakes would cover it? And who's checking anyway? Why does everyone have to be unique? Because it's an expression of this magnificent creativity that the universe is bound and determined to express. It's why it's meaning. You see, this is meaning, this is purpose, to express that which is new, to grow, to expand, to evolve. Creation, it's likely, if you ask me, it's pretty clear creation did not stop after day 6 or day 7, but continues on. The universe is inflating. It's continuing to expand. Even the rate at which the universe expands is accelerating, and scientists don't know why. They can't really explain it. They've come up with these series of dark matter and dark energy, but it's sort of an X factor that allows them to admit that the physical universe is a small fraction, on the order of 8% of what exists in the universe. The other 92%, the number keeps growing. A few years ago it was 85%. Now they think it's like 90 or 92% of what makes up the universe is invisible and unseen. Does not reflect light, cannot be seen. You can't touch it, pass right through it. But it impacts gravity. And so that's how we know it's there. So just like a dog can hear frequencies or smell scents that we're unaware of, there's so much more to the universe that our physical senses are not cluing us into. But this middle element that comes third and stands as number two is where the mystery lies. That's where the secret is. And it's love. And it's consciousness. And it's many other things. It's wisdom. It's truth. And I have a document that I wanted to share with you guys today.
Michael,
Yes, Hannah?
I sincerely apologize for interrupting. I just wanted to give you a gentle reminder that at the tone, the time will be 11:59.
Yeah, I was just checking that out. And that's why I was tentative about. Thank you for that. And Hannah, please, you're my co-host. Jump in anytime. So I think I'm going to put that off. I went long for understandable reasons on the meditation and my whole rant about war as a non-political, that there are spiritual ways to look at it and to respond to it. And so I want to get to this chart. I promise you we'll do it next week. At least I've introduced the idea that there is a middle element that is where the magic sits between the creator and its creation. And this is the Son in Father, Son, Holy Spirit. It could be the daughter, but the whole idea of laying gender over the Trinity is simply that the Father aspect, which represents the will of the divine, is causative, whereas the mother, that's where matter comes from, mater, madre. The material world is feminine, Gaia, Mother Earth, because the material world is receptive to spirit. So the ancient ancestors, primitives, looked at nature and they saw the male of the species as being bigger and more colorful in most cases and strutting about and going out into the world and bringing home the bacon, and the female of the species, her responsibility, her side of her pole of the bar magnet, so to speak, was to be smaller and camouflaged and make the nest and of course bring forth life and nurture it. This is part of the misogyny and the patriarchy in the church, is that it's actually the feminine gender that brings forth life. And that freaked out the church. They didn't know exactly how to handle that. So they took what clearly is Father, Son, and Mother and called the mother aspect the Holy Spirit. If you ever wondered about that. So pagans, it's Father, Son, Mother. Christians is Father, Son, Holy Spirit. The earliest occurrence between ancient paganism and or pantheism, it's also called, as opposed to panentheism. Pantheism we'll talk more about in the difference in those two words. The earliest occurrence of the Trinity as Father, Son, Holy Spirit is Egyptian. King, Prince, Queen. Isis, Horus, and Osiris. Or I have that backwards. Osiris, Horus, and Isis. Isis is the queen. Isis is the mother. Osiris, some say for the star Sirius. Osiris is the king. Horus is the sun. And the life of Horus is very similar to the life of Christ. Thousands of years before Jesus appears. But there are some Christians that reject Trinitarianism because they see it as an abomination. It's actually Egyptian. It's Hermetic. It's King, Prince, Queen. And just because you're calling the Queen Holy Spirit, you can't fool me. This is Egyptian. This isn't real Christian. Christians cannot be Unitarian or cannot be Trinitarian. They must be Unitarian. And there's actually a church that is called Unitarian, but those guys are so liberal and mellow, they don't really care for the most part one way or the other. If you're a Trinitarian, a Unitarian, there are atheists that go to Unitarian churches. So this is where we'll pick up next week, and I'll display this graph for you of the middle element, the sun. So Father gives birth to the mother, Spirit creates matter, and together their offspring is consciousness or love. So the Father is the will of God, the mother aspect, the Holy Spirit, is the physical body of God, the activity of God. The body of God is the universe. And the Father aspect is the will. Well, the Son, the Christ, the Christos, or the Buddha nature, is the love in the center. And there is a lower correspondence, which is our own mental, emotional, and physical nature. So 3 is very important. I mean, stories have a beginning and a middle and an end, and Pythagoras went crazy with his theorem about the right triangle and the stability of the triangle in construction and the 3-legged stool that never rocks. 1 or 2 legs is not very stable, and 4 legs or more on a table or a chair, the standard 4 legs, they've all got to be exactly the same length or it teeters. But a 3-legged stool, it's so stable it doesn't matter. Each leg could be a different length, and it's still going to be rock solid. So from ancient times, 3 has been known to be exceedingly powerful. And when you lay it out, spirit, consciousness, matter, cause, meaning, effect, Father, Son, Mother, it starts making sense. And I've got like 20 or 25 of those that I'll share with you. So, in this way, the universe proceeds. Energy creates mass, spirit creates matter, and what comes third and stands number 2 and makes the 3 a 1 is love. Love allows the one to manifest the many without being diminished. Now, I know that's a lot of information. That's a lot to take in, and they never told you any of that in Sunday school, but offered for, what did Rod Serling say, Steve? Offered for your, Snyder, help me out. Offered for your, that old Rod Serling line in Twilight Zone, offered for your approval.
Submitted for your approval.
Submitted for your approval. Okay, who's got a question? Use the raise hand, if you will, and unmute yourself, and or Hannah will call on you if you have a comment or a question. Don't be bashful. Don't be shy. Step right up. If you
I
want,
can't find the raise hand, so I raised my real hand.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
This last week, I watched an interview with a professor from UC Irvine. He's a physicist, and he was talking about his work being about seeing consciousness as fundamental. It was a very interesting interview. We talk about everything is only consciousness, and our imaginations make it form. It was a very interesting interview. I highly recommend it. I posted it on Facebook if you want to see it. But question: do you do anything with binaural beats during meditation?
Oh, yeah, I've played around with binaural beats quite a bit. Going back to the early 80s, I was a distributor of a light and sound device that came out of research at the Monroe Institute. They were doing holosync cassette tapes that not only created altered states, but Robert Monroe was very into out-of-body experience and soul travel and such, and found that by manipulating sound, particularly different frequencies, he could create some rather remarkable altered states. And as I'm sure you know, Larry, but others may not hear, the nature of the binaural beat is to offset two tones by just a few hertz, maybe in most cases about 4 hertz, 4 cycles per second. That's pretty slow. And it creates a attempt of the two hemispheres of the brain, the left brain and the right brain, to reconcile, so to speak, these two different beats. We talked earlier today, before we started the recorder, I think, about 440 concert A, 440 cycles per second. Well, let's suppose we put 440 in one ear and 444 in the other ear. The brain would tend to move to 4 hertz, which is a deep theta trance-like state associated with a lot of hypnagogic imagery, strong visuals, and REM activity, and bouncing eyelids, and that's beyond where most people go in meditation. But if you ever find yourself while you're meditating losing track of your body, and you don't know where your hands are, you don't know where your arms are, that's theta. It's a great place to go for pain control, for accelerated healing, certain other things are better accomplished in these really deep states just this side of sleep. Most of us meditate in alpha, which is a gentler state, around 10 cycles per second or so. And so beside the binaural beat, a lot of these light and sound machines will start at a normal brainwave frequency, say 35 beats a second, beep, 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 the flashing lights, the pulsing tones, and it'll have a little chip inside, a little IC that's programmed to go slower and slower and slower and slower. And the brain naturally entrains itself to this frequency. So as the beats go slower, the brain waves lower, creating these altered states of expanded awareness or higher consciousness, where we're more aware of being aware and more likely to notice what we notice and to come in touch with the ethics and the values that are intrinsic to higher consciousness. You become, gentler and kinder and more loving, and it's understood that these are qualities that are inherent to consciousness. So when you combine the stimulus of lights and sounds flashing with the binaural beats, you can create some really wonderful experiences, and great for insight, for understanding. You don't even need the lights. You can just close your eyes, and as you're suggesting, play the recording of the beats and takes you into a nice relaxed state, and then ponder your problem or process your emotions. And in those states, it's, I did it yesterday with a private client. I do a process called feeling dialogue, where she was frustrated about a problem at work, and she had a variety of strong negative emotions about a situation at work and couldn't really sort it out and figure it out. And we just narrated her into without binaural beats, we just narrated her into a nice deep relaxation level, and had her dialogue with a character that represented her feelings. And 5 minutes, she had all the insight, these ahas, these, oh my God, well, that's what it's about. And she even found a knife in her back at one point, and she realized that she was feeling stabbed in the back. It just like dawned upon her, in these altered states. So, yeah, that's the value of that stuff. Binaural beats are great. I'm a big fan of light and sound and binaural beats, and it's a much more controlled way than psychedelics, for example, to get to an altered state. You don't have the madness that goes with psychedelics. So, yeah, play around with them. Experiment with them. They're safe. They're harmless. And thanks, Gloria. It's nice to see you. The bottom of the toolbar, we don't have that many today, I suppose, if you just want to speak up. But in the future, if we have a lot of people, there's a reactions button down below, and in there you'll find a raised hand. Anybody else have a question or a comment for us today on anything having to do with spirituality or psychology or philosophy or metaphysics, mysticism? What say you?
Quick comment. I want to how cool it was, I think, when you were talking about the Egyptians and sort of them being the originators of a lot of our current thought. And it just reminds me, I'm a Montessori teacher, and we have a whole section in our classroom devoted to geometry. And we introduce everything with a story. And one of the stories we tell about geometry is the strength of the triangle. We talk about the pyramids. It gets incorporated into grammar as well, because a black pyramid is the symbol for the noun, because it's the strongest structure that exists, and it's as old as time. And so I just thought that I think that connection with the Egyptians and geometry and pyramids, and I know there's such a thing as sacred geometry. I just liked hearing about that. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Yeah. Similarly, if you multiply 3 times itself, 3 cubed is 9. And the number 9, similarly, is quite magical, playing around with the number 9. I'm not prepared to do a presentation on it. It's been years. But there's so much fun that you can have with numbers. Fibonacci series is another one. And the sacred spiral and fractals and the way things unfold numerically. And music, of course. Music and math are both ways, very legitimate ways of understanding how the universe works. But for our purposes, 3 is just very, very important for the reasons that I've said. Consider the bar magnet. The north pole of the bar magnet would represent the father aspect, the causative, the will aspect of divinity. The south pole of the bar magnet would obviously represent the mother aspect, Mother Earth, or Gaia, the material world, the matter, the mater, the madre. What is the middle element in a bar magnet? Well, it's the magnetic field that surrounds and embraces, that is everywhere equally present. Remember, whenever in metaphysics or mysticism we talk about the center, we don't mean a fixed point precisely in the middle of two extremes. It's more like a football field, that the center is the whole playing field from this goal line all the way down 100 yards down the field to the other goal line. That whole playing field, that whole 100 yards is the center. That's where the game is played, right? When you cross over into the end zone, you score points, but you're also out of bounds. There's no game being played out there. And yet the center could not exist, or it would have no meaning, the playing field, without the end zones. And so center is relative. Center could be on the 20-yard line or the 40-yard line, on this side of the 50 or that side of the 50. And when we think of the bar magnet and the magnetic field unifying these two poles, father and mother, the pendulum comes to mind as well. And the top of the pendulum would represent the father aspect, just like the top of the bar magnet, for it is fixed and unmoving. But the plumb end of the bar magnet, which is the material world, the bottom of the pendulum, represents the material world. It swings widely to and fro, not just in two dimensions, but it can go around and around, back and forth and around, right? All over the place. And yet as you move up that middle element, the string that connects the two, the magnetic field and the bar magnet, the movement becomes less and less and less until you get to the very top of the pendulum. And then no matter how frenetic the bottom, the top of the pendulum is fixed and unmoving and unmovable. But proceeding from it is all this activity. So the pendulum and the bar magnet are nice allegories that I encourage you to play around with in your mind, or even get out some paper and sketch and consider how the middle element, so-called, between spirit and matter, between Father's will and the material body, sometimes called the activity of divinity, are the extremes, the polarities of the bar magnet. But the whole the magnetic field, there's no place between the two that isn't both. So the center represents the bothness of things. And that's why son, or offspring, daughter, could be daughter. It's just, again, the church is patriarchal. So the offspring of spirit and matter, of father spirit and mother matter, is consciousness or love. Love is consciousness. It's not just an emotional, warm, fuzzy affinity. It's awareness itself. That's capital L, love. That helps you understand riddles like love your enemy. What? How many Christians can give you a lucid explanation of what that means? And yet they call themselves Christians. Love your enemy. What? Why would I want to love, to even hug, to even tolerate the presence of someone who wants to kill me and hurt my family and steal my stuff and lie to me? And so why would I want to love that person? Because it means be conscious. Understand, why is this person your enemy? How are you participating in the two of you being enemies? How are you contributing to the fear that is the only thing that can block or contradict love? The ignorance, which is the only thing that can prevent understanding, you see. The way love drives out evil or fear or wickedness is the way understanding drives out ignorance. The way light dispatches shadow. There's no struggle. Shadow doesn't stand up and fight for its right to be dark. It simply exists as the absence of light. Ignorance exists as the absence of understanding, and wickedness and evil exists not as a force, but as the absence of love. Again, not as a warm, fuzzy, let's all get along. Love is consciousness, is understanding. That's the center aspect. That's the magnetic field that comes third, stands as a number two, and makes the three a one. That's the connecting element in the pendulum between the fixed, unmovable, and that which is frenetically swinging all over the place. Does that make sense? You guys like that? Anybody want to comment on that before we wrap it up here?
Yes, that makes a whole lot of sense. This is Pamela.
Hello.
Hi. I was reading a lot of that stuff with the I think the laws of the 7 universal laws and the polarity. That sort of like explains a lot about it. I just got to listen to this again, but it's great.
Is that, are you referring to Deepak Chopra's book?
No, the laws, the Hermetic laws, the 7 laws.
Kabbalion?
Kabbalion. Yeah. That's what it
That's
brings
a heavy book.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to teach the Kabbalion at some point in those 7 principles.
Mm-hmm. That would be good.
It would take at least 7 weeks to get through that.
Yeah.
How'd you stumble on the Kabbalion?
Let's see. I was listening to an Audible book and said something about if you understand these laws, they would change your life. And I didn't understand much about it. And the book was complicated to listen to. So I keep putting it off. And then I went online with an app called Squibs and dig up the document information so I could see it written. And then the laws start coming up. And I said, okay, I need to look at them, and just started reading them. And it started to make sense. Yeah. And that's how I found you with one of them too. So I'm still working with them, but listening to you is making more sense.
The Kabbalion is not to be confused with Kabbalah. The words sound similar, of course, but Kabbalah, which can be spelled any one of a half a dozen different ways, is a work of Jewish mysticism. Mm-hmm. Very rich and complex on its own. So phonetically, they sound somewhat alike, but Kabbalion is a completely different word. The author, by the way, is identified as the 3 initiates.
Right.
The best that I've been able to figure is that this book is attributable to a fellow named William Walker Atkinson, who was, as I remember, it's been a lot of years since I taught this, I seem to recall he was an attorney living in Chicago around the turn of the last century, like maybe born in the late 1800s and died in the mid-1900s or early 1900s. But he was just a metaphysics freak. He just loved mysticism and magic and occult and this whole, comparative religion. And he started studying Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes Mercurius Trismegistus. Boy, there's a mouthful, huh? And he's sort of the Moses of ancient Egypt. Often referred to in the Bible as Thoth, Thoth. But his full name was Hermes Mercurius Trismegistus, and you notice in the Greek and Roman pantheon, Hermes and Mercury are the same guy. And he usually carries a caduceus and has little wings on his feet. And this is a fallback to, 8,000 years ago, in this old Hermetic ancient Egyptian philosophy, often called Hermetic philosophy. And I always think of Johnny Carson doing Karnak the Great, and they would say, the questions have been hermetically sealed in this mason jar at Funkenwagnalls. Hermetically sealed is a reference to Hermetic philosophy and alchemy. And there's a lot there. They have their tablet, too. The Emerald Tablet is very mystical, very esoteric, but before Moses brought tablets down off Mount Sinai, there was this Emerald Tablet that, according to legend, was carved in bas-relief. In other words, the inscriptions were not carved into the tablet. The inscriptions stood forward from the tablet and were read against this green emerald background. Hence the word rubric for a law or a principle. Rubric meaning ruby red. So laws are called rubrics because of the Hermetic Emerald Tablet. And it was lost. It was destroyed, presumably by the Romans when they sacked the library at Alexandria about the time of Christ or shortly thereafter. On 2 occasions, Roman legions came in and destroyed all the ancient works that had been gathered together in the library of Alexandria, just as the Christian missionaries destroyed all of the work of the Inca, the Aztec, and these indigenous peoples of Central, South, and North America. Okay, well, I think that's enough for today. Again, unless I notify you otherwise, because of some unforeseen circumstance, we'll be here free of charge every week, Sunday mornings at 11. I hope you can make it. At this point, I see no reason. We're not that big, so you can tell your friends. You can invite them. I'm not going to mention this on the radio, at least not yet. I'm afraid we get too many people and be overwhelmed. So far, the only people that I've invited are people that have been reading my newsletter list. I have a lot of people that get the newsletter, but never read it. And I can tell. We have our ways of knowing whether you're reading or not. So that's who you've come from, that group of people that listen to the radio show, that read the newsletter. And if you have friends that you think would enjoy this and appreciate this vast overview of mysticism, metaphysics, rooted in science, not just physics, but metaphysics and quantum physics and spirituality and psychology and philosophy and comparative religion and just no right way and nothing to join. That's the best part. You're not joining anything. You're not following anybody. These are all ideas submitted for your approval, right, Stephen? That's the phrase. So
for your approval.
Yeah, there you go.
So,
make of it what you will. I want you to knit together your own philosophy and your own understanding, and join us. And the best way to invite your friends is to, rather than give them the code, give them my email and have them write to me with expressing their interest and why they'd like to join in just a couple of sentences. And that email, because I have several, for this class, I'm using AW Mystery School, obviously Ageless Wisdom, awmysteryschool@gmail.com. awmysteryschool@gmail.com. Now, if I post this on the internet, somebody has to get all the way through in order to hear this. So if they sat through this whole thing, that would qualify them too. Okay. Any comment or question before we boogie? Meditate on war. Send peace out into the world. It may sound hippy-dippy, but it matters. It really, really makes a difference. Do it for your own benefit, such that you can be involved, engaged, stay informed. We have to face our fears. We got to wade into the shadow. The gold is always protected by the dragon. And if we're going to liberate the beautiful princess, we got to dispatch the wicked witch. You always have to go through the dark and the wicked and the evil and the fearful to get to where we want to go. That's just the way the universe works. Joseph Campbell said, "The treasure you seek is hidden in the cave you least wish to enter." And Carl Jung wrote about that on a couple of occasions as well. What came to me in my meditation years ago was the best parts of you are hidden where you're most afraid to look. That's where you want to go. Go where you're most afraid to go. That's what makes you a spiritual warrior. You see, the jihad is internal. The crusade is internal. The enemy is within. It's your fear. It's what we don't understand, our fear. What we don't understand, what confuses us, whatever frightens us, that's what we must vanquish so that we become fearless spiritual warriors. Okay? Let's do it together. Let's do it weekly. Thanks for being here. Hope you listen to the radio show too, every Tuesday, 1 o'clock in KPFK, streaming at kpfk.org. Thanks for being here. Say goodbye to everybody. Say goodbye. So long. Namaste. Aloha. Okay, I'm shutting it down. So long, people.